All right, welcome back to Cusp of Coffee and the ups and downs of dental school. I'm Johan Klerk, a final year dental student.
And I'm Uwais Adam, a third year dental student.
So during the last episode, we did a bit of a Q&A, but this week we are back in the swing of things at our respective hospitals. So Uwais, what has been happening on your end lately?
Okay, so life has been busy writing tests, clinics, all the usual sort of things. A very kind of normal 2 weeks of dental school, and by saying normal, I mean very chaotic and very much ups and downs. So out of everything that happened, the thing I want to mainly talk about that happened over the past 2 weeks is my journey in PROS. Because if anybody knows me, and you know this as well, PROS has been the clinic that I kind of gauge my clinical capability in the most, because it's the clinic that tests my patients every single week, and that's like it. Literally, no matter how much I prepare for, things are always proven to me that they can definitely go sideways. So basically, right, I'm now doing my third denture, right? Third full for my third patient this year. And
Nice.
so basically at this point I need to sort of we're at this kind of point where there's not a lot of weeks left, right? At this point of recording, there's about 1 week left of term 3. Then term 4 happens, and it's like basically in exams. So every week you have to like kind of do a procedure. So week 1 primaries, week 2 secondaries, week 3 George. So you have to like move according to a week system. You can't really afford to get slowed down, because then you're going to be drastically trying to make up the time and work overtime or something like that. So that's been stressful. And so starting my third case, throughout all the ups and downs of my first and my second case, I kind of had a lot of this weight on my shoulders and sort of curiosity, like thinking, when I walk in this clinic and I start with this third case, how is it going to go? I don't know how much my hands have learnt or have retained memory-wise. I know that I know my work in my head, but are my hands going to work? And so I started with my primary impressions, and the first session went relatively well. I got my x-rays done, I got my history done, and I started with the primary impressions. And I took the first one, and it didn't come out right. And I started to panic a little bit, and I was like, okay, this is becoming a repeat of the last few cases. And so I retook it, and it didn't come out 100%, but they told me, you know what, for the sake of time, it's just a primary impression, let's keep it. So I was kind of feeling like not so good about it. The lower impression came out, again, not so nice. And I didn't know why it wasn't coming out right. And so I showed it to the supervisor, and they told me, you know what, let's redo it on the lower. They helped me with some steps and stuff, and then they like sort of stood there, and I took the lower, and then it came out okay-ish, and we kind of finished. I went to the supervisor at the end. She looked at me, and she was going to give me a mark now for the session. She looked at me and she asked me, how many times did you take the impressions? So I said, no, I took it twice for both. I got it on the second attempt. Immediately, she gave me a 58% for the entire session. And she said these words to me. She looked at me and she said, "This is unlike you." And I didn't understand what the hell that meant, because I'm not a god at PROS. I don't know what she was trying to say to me, but clearly she knew that I was, so basically like a lot of people are on their second denture, and I'm on my third. So with that comes a lot of expectation. And so the fact that I didn't get the impressions right the first try gave me a 58. And I kind of felt very defeated I definitely felt very defeated walking out of there. And I was like, oh goodness, this is going to be a repeat of my entire PROS journey once again. It's going to be all shit. And like, it wasn't a good place to be in. Anyways, skip ahead. Second week rolls around. I now need, and then also I had to go to the lab and pour those models, and like I hate working with Yellowstone, with gypsum, and it was just like a big mess. And I was like, I was again starting to fall into that thing of saying I hate PROS. And so second week rolls around, it's time to do secondaries. I am scared out of my mind because I don't want another 58% for this thing. And I was watching lots and lots of videos. I even messaged you and I asked you like tips on taking secondaries. Like I just wanted to do everything that I possibly could outside of the clinic to try and, prepare myself for inside the clinic. watched lots of videos, tried to even practice the technique with nothing in my hand, like shadow boxing, but shadow impression taking, like just like practicing the moves. Let me get insert the tray sideways and then put your fingers here, like all of these
just
things.
starts playing like the Rocky music.
Literally, like there was this whole training thing. Amidst all of these, like studying for pharmacology and microbiology, like I still needed to worry about this. So got to the clinic, got everything set up nicely, and I was like, okay, it's time to take secondaries. So we have to take secondaries, obviously using some Zoe, zinc oxide, eugenol, SS white, and that is not the best material. It's very sticky, it's messy, and I'm not a fan overall. But anyways, so we start the session, and I take the first impression, and there's a massive gap in the sulcus around the incisors, and I'm trying to understand why is that there. And so I show the supervisor, and they tell me, you didn't block out the undercuts on your model when you made your special trays. And I'm like, oh damn, here we go, another write-off session, another piece of junk session. I'm failing this entire thing. The fact that the same supervisor is looking at me saying, you didn't block out your undercuts, we taught you that in second year, what is wrong with you? And then I was like, okay. Then she told me, you know what, you can't take this with SS White. Go and get some blueprint alginate, mix that up, do it. So did the alginate impression. Again, the undercut thing was poking through. There was like a big gap in the front of the impression. Supervisor came around, she tried it. This patient had a massive undercut, so it was difficult, but the supervisor like loaded that tray. It literally was like, I think like this patient's entire pharynx and larynx was filled up with alginate, but you know what? Pulled out like a mold of their throat. But basically the impression came out and it looked like shit, but the supervisor was like, you know what? It's fine. Use this one. Cool. So now I needed to start on the lower. Took the lower tray, put the impression material in, practiced all those moves, got it in the mouth, took the impression, right? Popped it out, looked at it, and I was like, you know what? This looks good, but if I know anything, it's that I know nothing. So I took it to the supervisor. She looks at it and she's like, wow, this is actually a really good impression.
Oh,
and I literally waited for her to say, psych, I was lying, it's not. But
got him, bro.
But like, got him, haha, you thought. But she didn't. And she was like, yeah, this is actually like a really good impression. I'm actually really impressed by this. And I was like, huh? And she's like, yeah, there's just the area here I want you to grind down because you have a bit of an overlap with your green stick. But otherwise, just go grind that. And then, yeah, it's actually very good. So I was like walking and I was like in shock. Walked back to my cubicle. I was fully expecting to tell my patient, sorry ma'am, we have to retake it. But I told her, guess what? We're actually done. She was happy. So then I'm waiting and I'm hearing the supervisors talk. And they're like, what do I give him here? No, but that was a really good impression. I go back and turns out after all of that, she actually gave me a 70 for the session. And I walked out of there like a hero because I was like, I started off so badly. Like in the first session, as well as the second session, I started off bad. And I got a 58 in the first one. And it kind of felt like all this preparation and all of this like anticipation from my first case to my second case to even my first session of my third case. All of it was kind of building. And it got to this point where now it's like I got a 70. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect now, but it was just like such a stamp of validation. And later on in that week, I kind of had a lot more confidence with anything pros related. So later on in that week, I had to cancel my PDO patient because in classic Tigerberg fashion, all of the compressors were down, so there was no suction. Obviously, I just needed to cancel my patient because that's normal. And I had time, and so I went to help Nakib in pros, and he was doing his secondary impressions. And he asked me, like, can you come help me? And I kind of felt very confident in the fact that I could help him. And so when it came to like mixing the material properly, loading up the tray, I mean, it was all him when it came to taking the impression, but I kind of like guided the process a bit, and he got both of those impressions like down pat, like the first try. And even though that was his win, and I was like really proud of him for doing that, I kind of also took a little bit of satisfaction from it because it felt like I was sitting there and I knew what I was doing, and I sort of had the clinical work to back that up because I did like a really good session. And so like now going into George, I read up on everything, and I kind of feel like a little bit more confident. Like this can go either way because Pros really can humble me, but I will see how it goes. But at this point, I kind of like, I like where I am, and I feel like it came full circle.
Yeah, so I kind of have a tangential story to this. So your saga has been REM pros, removable prosto.
Yeah.
For me, it's been fixed pros, crown and bridge.
Yeah.
So during this time, my crown and bridge saga continued. So just a bit of a recap.
Yeah.
For this case, I've basically anything that could go wrong has gone wrong up until this point. I had 10 crowns that lasted like 2 hours before they fell out. I've had 10 crowns that did way too good of a job at being crowns to the point where neither me or the supervisor could really get it out, and wasted like a bunch of time on a Friday afternoon trying to get that done. Stayed like way over time just trying to get an impression for like a post and call. And now, you know, I've kind of conditioned myself that every single time I have to go to the Crown and Bridge clinic and I'm working with this case, you know, I've kind of trained myself to just expect the worst. And there's like this looming sense of anticipation, similar to what you said with Frame Pros, where it's like, it's kind of, despite everything else that's going on, it's like, it's constantly there in the back of your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So this week, I rock up to the session. I'm like, okay, cool. It's a 2-hour session. It's probably going to take me like 4 hours to get everything done.
Yep.
Let's just go for it, you know? And this whole, and so since last time, we took the impressions for the post and core. In the meantime, the lab made the post and core. And I take it off the model and it looks good. I'm like, okay, cool. This probably won't fit. And like, this is me talking to myself in my head. 'Cause I'm just expecting the worst, right?
Yeah.
So patient comes in, get everything set up. I take this little post and core. I like position it over the tooth, fully expecting something to go wrong. And it just boop, clicks in place. Perfect seal. Everything is nice. I'm like, there's no way. Let's take an x-ray. So I go and I take a fit x-ray. And it looks good. I'm like, okay. So how it works with us, before you're allowed to cement any post and cores or crowns, the patient needs to pay first, because we make use of like external labs. So I'm like, okay, the fit seems good. So we go downstairs, just so the patient can pay for the post and core. And then all I have to do is I just need to cement it. And like, that's it. So now we're standing there waiting. I'm waiting for the patient to pay and everything. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of like 10 different ways in which the cementation process can go wrong. And I'm like, you know, just like I'm so in my own head the whole time. Eventually we end up back at the chair. And one thing I've learned at this point is to not over prep for using a certain material, because most of the time when I get there, I end up not using the material that I prepped.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh, we don't have that. This is all we have today. So I just asked them what they had that day.
Smart.
So, and I don't know, everyone is in a good mood in the clinic, except for me for some reason. And the like assistant nurse, she's like, yeah, don't worry, I'll like mix the cement for you and everything. You just have to like put it in. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, and she hands me the like application gun, and it has like this little thin nozzle at the front that you put into the canal itself, so that you can squirt some cement in there so that it wraps around the post and core once you put it in. So she hands it to me and she's like, okay, you've got roughly 10 seconds to do this. So, and I like aim for the canal and I cannot get this nozzle in. So there's like 2 seconds of pure panic where my hands are shaking and I'm not getting it lined up. Because, you know, she just out of nowhere hit me with the like, oh, you've got like 10 seconds to do this. But I get it in, put the composite, and I'm like, I don't know because it was like a composite cement we used. And I don't know if it's like enough that I put in or whatever, but I'm like, but she's like, okay, put it in. So I take out the nozzle, take the post and core, put it in there, slap it in there, and just hold it in place. And I needed to wait around about like 5 minutes for the dual care composite to have set enough that I can let it go. So 5 minutes of me just sitting there gaslighting myself of like, did I get enough in the canal? Is there enough around the sides? Like, was it too hard before I put in the post and core? Like, did it seat all the way? Like, I'm just like running through all these things in my mind. Eventually the 5 minutes is up and I'm like, okay, let's go take an x-ray. So we go to the x-ray room. I take the x-ray and it looks fine. I'm like, okay. So we go back to the chair. I call my supervisor and still, like, literally the procedure is done, but I'm in my head, I'm still like, something's wrong. I'm about to get destroyed. Supervisor rocks up. He looks at the x-ray. There's like a few seconds of just total silence. I'm like, yeah, here it comes. He looks at me. He's like, okay, cool. Just do the paperwork. You can leave. I'm just like, huh? And I look at the patient. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're done for today. Like, it just, and even the patient was surprised. They were like, really? Are you sure? Like, nothing else? And I was like, yeah, we're done.
Bro, it's like the same story. We told the same story, but at different levels. It's insane.
So it's this thing of like, I kept waiting for things to go wrong. And the moment it didn't, I was actually surprised because I was just so used to things not going my way at this point, and that like struggle is the only normal thing that happens. So yeah, the fact that it went smoothly and I got to leave early, I was just like, what is happening? And then kind of on top of that, so the last time I saw this patient, so that visit where I had to take the impressions and it was just a struggle and we ran over time, I mentioned earlier that day I wrote a period test and I felt like, I had kind of flunked the test because I made like a big misdiagnosis in the paper and a lot of the questions followed up on that diagnosis. What ended up happening was this Friday we got our marks and our papers back, and even though my diagnosis was wrong, they still gave me like pity marks because it was my answers were technically correct for the diagnosis I made.
Yes.
So they basically gave me like half the marks for that section. So there's now actually still a chance that I might promote the peer exam. So despite all my doom and gloom and beating myself up, it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of stuff this past while that like clicked into place despite me fully expecting everything to just go wrong. And I had this realization very recently that nothing feels as difficult anymore as compared to just like a few weeks ago. And I think it's that thing of like just slowly getting into it, and a lot of the stupid mistakes I was making, I don't do them anymore because I've since learned from it. And so just the fact of like getting those baseline stuff out of the way, everything's just running a lot smoother now. And it got me thinking again about the ice cube analogy. I told you about it the other day, but I think it's like worth bringing up again just because it's been on my mind. So it's just this idea that the author James Clear talks about in the book Atomic Habits. And he basically talks about how an ice cube only melts at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's say you put it in a room and the room is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Like there's not a lot happening in the room. There's not a lot of energy there. What you want to do is, you want to melt this ice cube. And the ice cube is kind of like the analogy for whatever the thing is that you're struggling with. And he's like, you're trying all this stuff. You're trying to put energy into the room, trying to heat things up. Just putting in all this effort to try and make a change somehow. And you work hard. And the temperature maybe goes up from 25 degrees to 26 degrees Fahrenheit. But the ice cube is still there. It's just chilling, like staring at you, Like, yeah, it feels like it's mocking you because you're putting in all this effort, but it feels like nothing is changing.
Yeah.
And so, you keep working, you go up to 27, you go up to 28. Like, you've put in a lot of work at this point, a lot of energy, and yet the ice cube is still there, and you feel like an idiot because it's like, what's the point? I'm putting in all this effort, but I'm not seeing results. But, that there's kind of a point at which you really just got to trust the process, and you just kind of got to double down because you never know. And so it's like you keep going, you could keep putting in the energy. You go up to 29, 30, 31. At 31, you're kind of over it at this point because it's like now you've put in a lot of thought and energy into this thing. And it's kind of like if you pull out now, then all this energy it has been wasted,
Yeah.
But still, the ice cube is there. Like, it's just staring at you, like nothing has changed. And then you go up just one more degree, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and suddenly the ice cube melts. That thing that has been standing there this whole time, just in an instant, boop, gone. Like, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's not an issue anymore. And basically, the idea is there's no point in complaining about the ice cube not melting if you haven't put in enough work and enough energy to get it to that point. Like, all the action happens at 32 degrees. So until you get there, you kind of just gotta like believe in the process and just kind of tell yourself that the energy you're putting in is not being wasted. It's just being stored. And there will be a point at which it's kind of just like a bit of a chain reaction where everything just clicks into place, and this thing that has been bothering you this whole time just disappears, like it's just not an issue anymore. So that was really on my mind recently, especially with the Crown and Bridge and Perio just clicking into place way better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And like similar to what you said now with your third case, where it's like, you've been through 2 whole cases, you do your primaries and it's still a struggle. And it's like, you just feel like you walk out of the clinic and instead of a hero, you feel like a 0.
Yeah.
But now at the end of like the secondaries visit, like things started clicking, and it's like, oh, we're getting to the point now where the ice cube is starting to melt. But it took it's now end of August. So it took 8 months to get to this point of just putting in energy, trying to heat up the room. But again, like all the action happens at 32 degrees. So until you get there, you just gotta trust in the process. Like, and I was talking to a recent grad on Monday, and she told me, look, the nice thing about dental school is that you're not all that special.
Yeah.
And what she meant by that is there are like a lot of people that have done this before you, and there are a lot of people that will do it, after you've done it. So if all those people can do it with all their own problems, chances are pretty high you can do it as well, especially if you've made it like, for example, if you've made it all the way to third year. Like, if you really didn't belong there, you would have either left or fallen out at this point, but you're still there. So it means the kind of struggle and the energy you're putting in is going towards something. It's just most days, all you're going to see is the ice cube. It's only much later on that you start seeing it melt.
Yeah, and it's like you can't just stop because you don't know, and like you can't see the temperature going up. I think that's also the important thing. Like, there's no temperature gauge because you don't know when the next little number that goes up is going to be the one that actually melts the cube. Or like the same analogy we gave in like the first episode, like banging your head against the wall. Like, you keep doing it over and over and over, hoping the wall's going to break. And when it's not breaking, after your head is so sore from banging against this wall, you get so frustrated. But you don't know how structurally sound that wall still is after all of those bangs, until eventually it just breaks, and you don't know which little final hit is going to actually break that wall. Like, you don't know. All you can do is just keep doing it. Like you said, like at this point, those mistakes and stuff that you made, they kind of contributed to the fact that you don't worry about those small things anymore because you made the mistakes already. And the way that you made those mistakes was just keep increasing the temperature, keep banging your head against the wall. All these analogies, like, you don't stop because You don't know when the next one is going to actually be the one that just breaks through, and the one that actually just, ties everything up together. And no matter how far you get, people give up at different times. Some people give up. Like, I've seen so many first years drop out in the first 2 weeks because I don't know what it was. People have their own reasons. Maybe they wanted to study something else. Maybe they realized, this is not for me. But there's also people that drop out after third year, drop out after fourth year. I know of medical doctors that have been through all 6 years of med school and drop out in internship. Like, at that stage in your life, like, you've made it through 6 years of a grueling degree. You get into internship. All you have to do is just hold on for 2 more years, another year of intern, 1 more ComServe, and you're a doctor, and they drop out. And it's like, if you hold on and just, have faith that the wall is going to break, you just don't know when. You don't know when it's going to break. And that can be seen as an analogy for the entirety of the degree, just to keep going until you graduate, and graduating, being the metaphor for the wall breaking. Or it can be for all these everyday struggles, which I feel is like way more suited, like whether it comes to, getting better in Crown and Bridge or getting better at pros. And there's all these added things that make it more stressful, seeing everybody around you do it, the comparison trap that we spoke about last episode. All of those things just add stress to it, because now everyone else's ice cube is melting. And you're like, but now how did their room get warmer than my room, even quicker than mine did? And you just have to trust the process. Like, you have your own journey. You're on your own journey. You have your own struggles. You have your own set of circumstances that's going to click at a different time for you than everybody else. But you just kind of have to trust the fact that it's going to click when it's going to click. And when it does click, it feels so good. Like, it makes it worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that thing of what you mentioned about, like, people just kind of dropping out at some point, despite like a lot of time and energy that's already gone into it. I think there's also a level of like trusting in the process, but also kind of trusting in the path. Like, for me, some days in dental school aren't fun. Like, genuinely aren't fun. Like, I mean, for example, I spoke about a Crown and Bridge session that took me 6 hours. I walked out of there. I felt defeated. I did not enjoy any of that 6 hours. In retrospect, I'm really glad that, I'm now on the other side of that 6 hours, because I learned so much out of it. But on the day, I mean, I did not have fun. That was not a good time. Like, I did not go to class afterwards with a big smile on my face and be like, oh yeah, the dentistry, the coolest job in the world. Like, literally, I was like, so like, where's the office again to deregister? But there is a level of like, I know what it feels like to figure something out, and that I know what the high is from that, So, you have to kind of realize that at no point in the journey is the journey magically going to become easy. Like, it's just going to keep being iterations of what you've already had. And the lows might get lower than they are now, but the highs get higher and higher and higher. Like, I cannot tell you the satisfaction of, for example, finishing a tough endo case versus, back in first year when we were making like clay models and doing wire bending and stuff. Like, yeah, it was really fun at the time when you get it right, but the high from that is like, it doesn't compare at all to like the highs that I get now. And nowadays I have to struggle a lot more to get that high. But when it hits, it's like it's such a rewarding, fulfilling feeling. And the only way to kind of get through those rough days is to know what it's like to have the good days and to really hold on to that. And to just recognize, like, not all days are going to be good. And there's not a point at which magically every day is good. But if you're willing to kind of put up with that struggle, then it's fine. Then, like, this is the correct path. I think people kind of, and I see this a lot when I talk to some of the younger students, they're like, oh, well, they say that, like, if you're doing what you love, then like you never work a day in your life. I think that's bullshit.
I hear that
Especially
so much.
if you're trying to do something meaningful,
Yeah.
that is difficult, then it's not fun and games all the time.
It really
it's
isn't.
serious work. Especially because it's healthcare as well. It's like there's people involved, you know, and it's not an easy kind of field to work in, especially if you want that doctor title by the end of it. Like there's a lot of responsibility and kind of strife that comes with that, unfortunately. But that's kind of the deal, and it's not like this airy fairy thing where every day it's just smiles all around. Like that's just not the nature of the profession. But that's not to say it's necessarily a bad thing. Like I always come back to just this idea that if it was easy, everyone would do it. And if everyone was doing it, like how valuable would it be?
Yeah.
It's the fact that you are trying to kind of level up and trying to do something difficult that you are inviting like struggle into your life. But again, because you're kind of willingly putting yourself through that, when you start figuring stuff out and things start clicking, it's like, whoa, I did that. Like me, despite like, you know, having no talent in whatever, and you have all these fears and anxieties, at some point the ice cube melts.
Yeah.
And the high from that is on a different level because you had to put in so much more effort to get that stupid ice cube to melt. So it is a bit of a trade-off. And I think the big thing is just recognizing that at no point does it just magically become easy. Like it's in the hard days and the good days that you have to kind of try and find meaning in the whole thing. I mentioned the other day I've been reading this book series by Brandon Sanderson. It's like this book series about knights and stuff. And one line that comes up a lot, especially in the latest book I've been reading, is just this simple sentence of journey before destination. Because if you take a race, for example, the finish line is like, it's not that wide actually. It's less than a step to go over the finish line. Like if you look at for example, if you take like a 10K marathon, for example, then the finish line is less than 1% of that. Like it's such a small piece of the event itself that it doesn't make sense to have that be the only meaningful part. If less than 1% of the thing is going to be meaningful to you, you're probably not going to have a very fun time running, and you're not going to run for a very long time because there's no drive. But if you enjoy the running itself, then you're going to have a fantastic time because more than 99% of it is running. So you kind of have to apply that mindset to dentistry as well, where it's like if you can find meaning and you can find growth in both the good days and the bad, you're going to have like a flippin' fantastic career and a very fulfilling career as well, because even the bad days are contributing to like something bigger. But if you're only going to count the days in which everything went perfectly, I can promise you that's going to be less than 1% of your year, because that is just not dentistry.
Like really not.
There's no such thing as a perfect day in dentistry.
Never. And you know, like chasing that high, I feel like out of context we can definitely come across as a bunch of drug addicts, but it kind of is that like we need to be like, you're just chasing that feeling. Like it's so weird because like I've heard, you know, my younger brother is, you know, like in grade 10 now, and he told me the other day, he said that his teacher told him, or somebody told him that, you know, you must pick a job you love and then you'll never work ever, or something like that. And I literally scoffed, and I was like, oh my goodness, like that is something that is just, it's just not true, because no matter how fun it looks, and it is fun, it's really fun, you know, especially if you enjoy it, but there are some days where being in dental school or doing dentistry, it doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a job, or it feels like something I'm studying dentistry, you know? Like a lot of the times when you enjoy something, you kind of make it part of your identity. It's like, I am a dental student. And then there's days when you're just not vibing with it, and then you become a student doing dentistry. it's not a dental student. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of separate yourself from it, and you're like, I'm here because I have to be, not because I want to. And that's okay. I feel like it's okay to do that. You need to have, like, you can't only have good days. You can't only be up, because if you were only up, you wouldn't appreciate what it is to be there. And the way that the course is structured, and the way that this field actually works, is that you have no choice but to be down a lot of the time, because to get to the point where you are the person that people trust with their health, and to a certain extent, to their standard of living and their well-being, you need to have a certain level of understanding, a certain level of skill, a certain level of education, of patience. There's so many different attributes, and with all of that only comes with time. And it's almost like this is like, well, it's not even almost like, it is like, this is the burden we bear because we've chosen this, And if you get to a point where you realize this isn't for you, then maybe it's okay to leave. Maybe it's okay to go find something that's better for you. It's not like, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't make you less of a person. But the sooner you realize that, whether it's in first year, second year, whether you're in third, or even maybe you in final year, and then you only realize it, you have to be okay with that. Like, this is the burden you've chosen. When you're sitting there, it's not just like, people ask me, people who don't understand how the degree works, they ask me like, oh, how's your pracs going? And it's like, I don't have pracs. I have a life. Like, this is my life. Like, I'm in the clinic every single day. That's not a prac. It's just me doing my thing. It's so weird. It's so different, Like, other degrees, they have OSCEs and they have practicals, and then they have lectures. We have lectures mixed in with clinics. Like, clinics isn't a prac. You're just graded and marked and supervised all the time doing the thing. And when you're doing that, you're sitting down and you're working on an actual person, and you're supposed to be giving them proper healthcare as a 20-something-year-old university student. That's nuts. It's crazy. Like, other people are like on campus drinking coffee and going to the library to study business, commerce, all these other things, like, all have their place, but it's very different. It's very different to do something where you just plunged into this world and suddenly you expected to be a primary healthcare physician or doctor to somebody while studying, and that's the burden you bear, and you have to ultimately be okay with that, because that's where all the stress comes from. That's why it's difficult, because it's not easy to be giving that care to somebody, and that person relies on you, and that is why it's like so stressful. Like, you feel that stress because you can't just get something wrong and then just redo it like you could in preclinicals. It's like, you mess up that post and core, it doesn't cement. Like, that's somebody's mouth that it's incorrectly cemented in. It's stressful. But
yeah, because it's like, it's not like an assignment where it's like, oh, I messed up the assignment, now my mark went down. It's like, oh, like, maybe I didn't prep the post and core properly, now I perforated, now the patient loses a tooth. Like, the repercussions of doing something wrong is just so much higher in a healthcare degree. So yeah, like, that stress is part and parcel of the job. But something that I thought about this week, actually, is that you can eventually, as you go along, you can choose to maybe change the relationship you have with dentistry. And I'm going to like use an example. So start of the year, pediatrics. I was terrified of pediatrics. Just walking into that clinic,
I remember this,
would would like basically double my heart rate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just very scared about working with kids. I had no confidence with any of their procedures. My first ever pulpotomy was a crime. It's a good thing I'm registered as a student, but like it was just not good, you know? And for the whole first semester, basically, peds was just beating me down. I would plan my schedule for the week on like a Sunday evening, and I would see that I have peds on Wednesday, and then I'm like, okay, cool. So today, Monday, and Tuesday is all written off completely because I need to use those days to stress about peds on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So it was this massive weight on my mind. And, there were so many days where I'm just like, yo, I wish I was like sick or injured or something that I just wouldn't have to go to Pete's. Like genuinely, I did not want to go.
I wish I was
and it's
sick.
like, yeah, it's like, I chose this degree, but why did I choose this degree? Because it means I have to go to Pete's. And it was just this big weight on my mind, right? And there's a lot of imposter syndrome that came with it as well, because I know that in private, like, you have to see kids. And I was like, can I really do this? Like, I know I'm like final year and stuff, but I was like, do I have the capacity to figure this out? I don't know. And eventually, near the end of the first semester, after months of just trying to melt the ice cube melted in the form of a pulpotomy exam that I spoke about, I think, in the first episode, which completely changed how I felt about pediatrics. Ever since then, I've just had a lot more confidence when it comes to pediatrics, and a lot of the sessions I've had since second semester started, just really good sessions. Like, I'm quick. The kids actually like enjoy the experience because I know how to make it fun for them. Like, it's good vibes all around. My clinical marks are like soaring. Like, it's just really good. And then earlier this week, I decided to kind of act on an idea that's been in the back of my head for a while. So I went to the head of pediatric dentistry at UP. I walked into her office, spoke a little bit, and then I kind of just point blank asked her, listen, I'm thinking of doing a master's degree. I'm thinking of doing it in pediatrics. Would you would you be okay with me applying for the master's? And then on top of that, would you be my supervisor for my dissertation? And I think, as surprised as I was even saying that, I think she was even more surprised, because like, she has seen me stressing this entire year. So when I came to her with that, I think I could see, like, she was like extremely surprised. But I think it immediately changed her perception of me, because she was so excited about it. And she just gave me like all these ideas, and she was like, yeah, we should do this, we should do that, we should do, and in the back of my head, I'm still like, did I really just do this? The module that I was the most scared of, I'm now choosing to do a master's degree in. But what I realized is, all that struggle, that slow, process of figuring things out and getting better. At the end of the day, it was a really fulfilling experience, because there's something about taking like a kid that, is kind of scared, they're kind of nervous, and now you need to do dental treatment, which, most adults aren't even comfortable with. And you take that and you completely change it around for them, where they're like genuinely excited to come and see you. There's just something really special about that. And I remember finishing that pulpotomy exam. My one friend that was like working a few cubicles over, she came up to me. She was like, "Oh, how'd it go?" And yeah, I mean, I was just like super emotional after that exam, and I just hugged her, and I started crying a bit, and I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it was like, I was overwhelmed in the best way.
Yeah.
Where it's just like positive emotions all around. And like, to this day, I've like, everything up until that point, I've never experienced such a high before. And even now, I haven't had something like that again, just because of the effort involved of getting there. And yeah, like, when that ice cube melted, like, it was insane. And I think after that, I started having a better relationship with pediatrics. And then now I'm at a point where I decided, you know what, like, I actually enjoy pediatrics. So why not just do my master's in it? Because I've been wanting to do masters in something, but I was a little bit like torn in terms of which direction to go in. But I was like, you know what's the thing that maybe scares me the most? And that was pediatrics. And I realized, you know what, like, it's not this mountain anymore that it used to be. Like, I can kind of choose to change my relationship. I could have accepted the default right from the start of the year that I'm not good at peds. I'm never seeing kids in private. I'm referring all of them. Under 12, go somewhere else. But instead, I decided to make the most out of it. And I think I have made the most out of it. And it's been such a rewarding experience. And yeah, now my relationship with pediatrics is completely different. And especially after my latest Crown and Bridge session, I'm now, like I said, during that whole session, I was so negative. But like reflecting back on it, I'm kind of like, what if I change my relationship with Crown and Bridge? Like, you can choose to do that once you get to like kind of a baseline level of competence. Because I mean, it's hard to be confident about something that you're not competent in. Like it's hard to be confident about impressions if you've only taken one impression your entire life,
Yeah.
So there is like a baseline level of competency you need. But I think once you reach that baseline, then it becomes a bit more of a mental game than anything else, where it's like, actually, what if I just choose to enjoy this? And yeah, I think especially after this week, I was like, yeah, maybe there is some merit to that, in that you don't need to accept all the defaults of dental school. Maybe sometimes, you can reserve the right to change your opinion on something. And that again, like you said, doesn't make you any less of a person. Like, I think there's sometimes this consistency bias of, oh, I used to say this, so now I need to keep acting in a way that, the things that I said in the past are still true. But I was watching this video recently by Hank Green, and he made this comment where he's like, why are you living your life according to a dumber version of you? Because the person that said all those things was a younger version of you. They knew less, they had less experience, they haven't been around as long as you have been now. You have more info with which to make a decision. So why are you holding yourself to what is essentially a dumber version of you? It's like, no, like, wake up every day and kind of treat it like the start of something new, like the new part of your journey, and make decisions based on how you feel now with the experiences you have now. You don't have to be beholden to that guy from 6 months ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, I mean, like I said, when I started pros,
Hated it.
I hated pros,
yeah.
Now
You're allowed to change your mind.
Exactly. And I've since changed my mind on pros. I've since changed my mind on peds. I might change my mind on Crown and Bridge. We'll see. We'll see where my motivation levels are at. But it is a choice. At some point, take yourself by the shoulders and be like, listen up. The finish line is less than 1%. Like, we got to figure out how to make this run a bit more enjoyable. And maybe part of that is literally just sitting down and making the choice.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you on that. Like, you constantly are changing your mind on things. And people ask me, like, people ask like the standard question you ask anybody in undergrad, like, do you want to specialize? And my answer has always been, and probably will always be till the end of my degree, is that I don't know yet. And the reason I say that is because exactly what you're saying. Like, I don't know what I like or what I will be liking soon. Like, I can easily say, nope, I'll never specialize in pros because I'm not enjoying it right now, when I'm only 8 months into pros clinics. I haven't touched endo yet. I haven't touched Crown and Bridge yet. I haven't touched a lot of aesthetic stuff yet. I barely, like, I'm 2 weeks into, like, on my oral surgery, a whole, experience. And so I don't know what my mind is going to be like in a few years from now. I don't know how I'm going to be in these clinics, whether I'm going to be enjoying it, whether I'm going to be just decent at it, or whether I'm going to be like, I don't really care much for it. But it's too, like, no matter what decision you make now, there's no point, because you're going to gain so much more experience and have so much more to learn in those fields, and so much more opportunities to change yourself and change your opinion and your skill set regarding it, that, you're allowed to change your mind. Like, it's not a set thing. And the better you are at accepting the fact that it's going to be hard, there's going to be ups and downs. Like we always say, every single episode, there's an up and a down in our stories, because every week there's an up and a down. There's not a single week that has ever existed in the history of dental school for any student in any country on this face of this planet that has been just up. every single day going according to
Yeah.
plan. Never, ever. And they never will be. Because it's impossible to control things when it comes to outside forces, when it comes to people, when it comes to different types of supervisors, materials, like your own hands, your own level of confidence, your brain, your mind, there's so many factors just here. There's going to be downs. And that's okay, because when the highs come, it's more addictive than drugs, clearly.
Yeah, keeps the ride exciting. But I think that's a nice wrap up for this episode. Yeah, I think next week is gonna be more of the same on my end. Just a lot of clinics, a lot of studying that needs to happen. So I'm sure I'm gonna get knocked down. I'm gonna have some lows. I'm gonna have some highs. It's gonna be another week in dental school.
Another week.
But with that being said, thanks for joining me for another episode of the pod, and I'll see you in the next one.
Enjoy the week ahead.